Hello and welcome to our talk, Getting Kids Podcasting at Rise and Shine Festival 2020, a talk all about getting children creating their own audio productions and also having creative experiences with sound.
We're Zoe and Leon from Wordplay, and we run audio projects for kids, and we also train adults in podcast production. My background is in education, and Leon is obsessed with all things podcasting, so we thought we'd set up Wordplay to merge our skills and experiences.
Yeah, and for this talk, we thought it would be handy to break it down into 4 different sections. So number 1 is how we go about introducing children to the world of podcasting through our workshops and events.
Yep, section 2, we're going to be talking about podcasting in schools and experimenting with audio in schools.
For number 3, we're going to have a look at inspirations for ourselves and inspirations of children that come along to these workshops or do their own audio endeavours.
And finally, our final section, we're going to be talking about some audio-focused games that we've devised and other organisations that have created activities for you guys to do at home with no equipment needed.
But just before we get started, as a disclaimer, please note that neither of us are podcast presenters, so do bear with us if anything seems unusual presenter-wise.
Yeah, we're a bit waffly, but we have spiced things up. We've put a few examples of our workshops in to keep it a little bit interesting. And you might have already noticed that we are reading off a script. Otherwise, we'd kind of go all over the place.
And looking at the script now, I've also got to say, if you've got any questions during the talk, do send them in and we're going to try our best to answer them at the end of the little presentation. Our whole ethos is centred around empowering children with the skills and confidence to independently produce their own audio content.
This doesn't necessarily mean following the traditional format of podcasting, but rather getting experimental with sound and exploring speech-based audio as a medium in itself.
Yeah, and some of the workshops that we do are fairly formally structured and go through all different avenues in that world, where other ones are completely out there, far more loose and experimental.
For all of this work, it's really important to consider that what we're creating is an active learning experience where kids are making decisions, they're pushing boundaries, and just generally going a bit bonkers in what is often their first experience and play with audio equipment.
And this is definitely an approach that we think is probably useful to take if perhaps you're a teacher or a parent or you work with children and you're introducing them to audio for the first time. The concept to play, that's the real entry to this world and why it's so exciting. It's a bit possibly dangerous to talk so much about the word podcast and get obsessed with what we believe podcasts to be, or perhaps what children believe podcasts to be. At this stage, it's all about experimenting with a new medium.
So we wanted to show you a few examples, and here are a few examples of a few different workshops and events that we've run in the past. So this first one is Radio Summer School. It's a 5-day course for teenagers in which they invented, branded and launched a fictional speech radio station with a Facebook Live broadcast on their final session. Throughout the course, the kids kept video diaries, and here's a clip.
So we started off day 1 just introducing ourselves and getting to know each other. A bit later on, we did a radio drama workshop.
I've got an idea. Why don't I play in this water? I decided to do it. George, is that really you?
Yes.
You don't look so good.
What really happened may shock you. I'm actually dead. So this morning we've been creating a music bed and just generally coming up with what we're going to be doing for our talk show. Me and my partner have decided to do wildlife watches, finding out different endangered animals and telling the audience where they live and how we can help them.
We done a pre-record of talking about nukes.
We just talked about,
Like Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un.
what's the name of the radio station, do you know?
I'm pretty sure it's kind of like...
FX Heartbeat. You have the rumours, we have the truth.
Listen in on Friday on Facebook Live, yeah. Be there.
So let's talk about emoji. We've become really excited about the ideas of translation and language and the visuals of language and symbols and characters. So I've designed a few different workshops that utilise on drawing skills and the nature of emojis, the invention of emojis, and also involving an audio edge. So combining all of those, which is a few different directions. And also to do this, we've hacked apart some speech to text software, which has allowed us to come up with a specialist emoji code that we ask children to help us make at these workshops. And then we program it into the machinery. And then hopefully, if all goes well, when people speak, they get to see potentially secret messages coming back in that language. And we've tried to have a thing going in all of our workshops where there's a legacy from it personally, where children pick up new skills, digital skills, or kind of endless skills that they get to use in the other world and whatever they go on to do. But also on top of that, we think it's cool when there's something in a workshop or a piece of artwork that goes on and impacts another artwork or workshop that happens in the future. And this is definitely one of them, because the emojis, you might even see some pop up during this speech, they've been creeping their way around all of the different workshops we've done ever since we introduced Let's Talk Emoji.
Yeah, it's ever evolving, isn't it? We like that.
Definitely.
In this example, we ran a podcasting in a day workshop for the British Heart Foundation with their One Beat group, which is a community meetup group for 18 to 30-year-olds living with heart conditions.
Over the session, participants got to work through every role in the podcast process, on and off the mic, and here's a little clip of them launching the podcast, because, I should say as well, it was live streamed, so there was a real visual element as well with multiple camera angles. It was pretty involved. So here's a little clip.
Lots to go wrong.
Yeah.
All of a sudden your life has changed, or even if you're born with it, you're kind of growing up and then realising, oh, this isn't actually normal. I'm not actually living a normal life. But when you find people who are going through similar situations, or like you, for instance, you're like, oh, this is actually normal. Yeah. This is my normal. It's something, and it's not just something I've got to go through on my own.
So, closing down the eyes, I just want you to place your hand on your heart. And just for this moment, this little experience, just start to feel the beat of your heart. And one beat's all about connecting. And each beat is a little moment to show you that you are connected, you are beating.
To finish this section, we're going to have a really quick look at our audio time capsules. They do what it says on the tin. We go to a community, get them to record messages for their future selves, but then spookily bury them alive with the voices coming out of the ground. We've got 2 clips to play here, both made there, and the first one's got video in as well, and it was filmed by children attending the workshop. And the second one is a message for future slug lovers or slug haters.
Hello everybody, this box that retains the recordings, 3rd of August 2016. We will be digging them up next year.
Hello! 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 I am Freya and I hope that I'm better at cartwheels soon. I like football to play with my friends.
My haircut is a high top with some fresh yam at the back.
You are tuned into Wordplay Radio.
Hi, I'm Sarah and this is
Summer.
We wanted to come on and to say it would be really great if people could cut down less trees.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just that people would stop killing slugs.
Oh yes, we'd like it if they didn't kill the slugs. Maybe just remove them instead.
We find it really important to consider play as a major outcome in podcasting in schools, and even though the language may be borrowed from podcasting and traditional broadcasting, it should be appreciated that the end piece, if you are making a straight up podcast, is almost irrelevant in this setting.
Yeah, the concept of there being a listenership and creating content for others should possibly be completely abandoned when working in schools and any kind of educational setting, as it's a massive unnecessary artistic tether that arguably perhaps we shouldn't even be obsessing about when we're making podcasts in the grown-up world.
Yeah, so the best work arises from trial and error, making mistakes and not being preconditioned, being told the do's and don'ts of podcasting. And this is well and truly cemented in our young customers and our young podcasters.
Yes, and with that in mind, since the very beginning, we've run a radio drama challenge as part of Wordplay, which is our take on the 24-hour film competition, where small teams are given challenge objects and are set against the clock to script, rehearse, and then broadcast live their very own radio dramas, complete with DIY Foley effects, making use of the Wordplay pop-up radio studio, which is really good. In the workshop, the final plays are broadcast live through a special closed system, allowing the other groups and friends and classmates, perhaps if it's in a school, to listen to the plays as they unfold. On top of that, we also emulate radio stations and podcasts and publish the final plays online for all the participants to listen to on demand. But it became immediately apparent that about 90% of the children couldn't care less. They don't really want to hear themselves back, arguably, and it's more about the doing and the experience of when they're on the microphones or preparing to do their radio play, and they'd much rather start working on the next project, whether it be with audio or not, rather than kind of analyse something that they've only really just stepped into. So that's just a finding, really.
Yeah, and as we've talked about it so much, we thought we'd play a little clip of a live radio play that some school kids have broadcast at one of our workshops.
Hello and welcome to Guinness World Records Live. Here we see Damien the Stuntsman jumping off a waterfall on a motorbike. Adjudicator Alison is currently attaching the measuring rope to the motorbike to measure how far he jumps. Over to you, Alison.
Thanks, Connie. Damien will be jumping off the waterfall and will be falling at roughly 80 miles per hour, and he'll be jumping from a height of 50 feet.
So, Damien, how are you feeling about this?
I feel amazing.
So you don't feel nervous at all?
No, not at all.
It's about to start.
This is for my mum, my granny, my cat, my lovely, lovely washing machine as well. 3, 2, 1. I am so excited. Do you want to fly? No. Well, where did that come from? Of course you do. Avada Kedavra. You will fly, then die.
Alison, where has he gone?
I don't know. The radio isn't working. He's not communicating.
Is this a problem?
Yes. He is almost certainly dead. The waterfall's power is too strong for him.
Maybe we should call the police.
Good idea.
9.
You have been listening to The Waterfall Tragedy.
Presenter was played by Connie Favell. Damien was played by Eddie Favell. Helder was played by Ella Gravatt. Adjudicator Alison was played by Alice Gravatt.
Bye-bye.
Our take on all of this is that podcasting and audio as a medium, especially in schools, can be drawn as a parallel to arts education, with the very first experiences with sound being like as a parallel to mark making on paper or canvas, your first experience using pencils, and it being kind of quite organic and raw and emotional, and perhaps is something that's worth exploring for long term. Like, some artists don't really leave that's a whole career. So if you consider that to be phase 1, phase 2 is possibly comparable, and don't be offended if you are a photographer, but could be compared to photography, because it's fully artistic, really creative, and a wide open free space for you to do with what you please. But it's kind of acknowledged that you need to get some basic technical skills and equipment down that you can use, and then that unlocks the next level where you can use all of this equipment as you please.
So the perfect audio education from our findings is the balance of two. So you want to be wild and free, but whilst also knowing the shortcuts to access more levels, I suppose, in that creative space. And that's what we're trying to do in our school workshops. So especially for those institutions that are more kind of after the technical checklists on their curriculum that they want kind of fulfilled.
Yeah, and if you are a teacher interested in introducing podcasting into your school, which we thoroughly recommend, we also think it's worth bearing in mind that it's not wise to do a lesson solely on the subject of podcasting. Podcasting is a medium, a tool that should be used for telling other stories, for communicating. And there's loads of exciting ways you can weave this skill within your curriculum, or perhaps use it to access or explore a topic or a trend that your students are really interested in. Or in some cases, we've worked with a primary school actually, where they have a regular school council with students of all ages who get together and discuss school issues, and they've decided to reformat that as a podcast, which they, with our help, collectively produced and presented, and that became a kind of asset that was shared outside of the school with parents and friends of the school, which is pretty exciting stuff, we think.
Hello, we're here right now in the top playground and we've come to interview the sports coach.
What are you doing in PE right now?
We're teaching reception class at the moment, so we're actually practicing catching.
Do you have any top tips for us?
Yes, once you throw the ball, keep your eyes always on the ball.
Do you like sports?
Do I love sport? Yes, I love sport. I love every sport possible. My main sport is football, but now it's changed to running.
How long have you been teaching football?
Ever since I was 16.
As well as technical hurdles, we know that finances behind independently launching a podcast project at your school sometimes make these projects seem unattainable. But the world of podcasting is DIY. It's ad hoc, it involves a lot of repurposing equipment, which we know teachers are really good at. We've been involved in many school projects where innovative school staff have repurposed music equipment, IT equipment, school spaces, physical spaces, to run their school podcast group, and they make really high quality learning experiences for the kids and also listening experiences without the need for spending loads of money.
Yeah, and once your project's up and running, there's lots of different ways that you can share or celebrate what's been made, even if the content is really just for the pupils and the staff at the school. The BBC alone runs some really great projects, including the School Report, the Radio Uploader for BBC local radios, and the Young Commentator of the Year Award on BBC 5 Live, which are all pretty cool things where you can kind of keep something close for you and your organisation, but have something to strive towards, I guess.
And finally, this bit isn't really aimed at teachers, but as lots of you all know, audio equipment, however basic it is really annoying when things break, doesn't work, and it's really untrustworthy. It's really frustrating. Leon's quite patient. I'm not patient at all. But imagine this is like amplified 1,000,000% when you get kids involved.
Yes, with that in mind, from the very beginning, it became quickly apparent that you always need an analogue plan B for when doing any audio activity in a school with children, because in a good way, children are the harshest critics of any technology. And if that microphone or software isn't working at the exact time they go to use it, they would quite quickly disregard it as being rubbish forever. Also, it's interesting to think about the whole thing. So we were saying about DIY, everything is DIY and about problem solving, and that shouldn't be hidden. At all the workshops we do, we set up the equipment with the children that are there, and that's part of it. So you can work out how it's stuck together, see that it's super DIY, and see that chances are we're going to have to rebuild this at some point during this course.
So just bear in mind that there will be lots of screaming into microphones, your equipment will get dropped, and this is a good one, the kids would 100% run away with headphones still on their heads. So that will happen every single time, guaranteed. Yeah, we've made a breakthrough and discovered a pair of headphones that are completely, so up to this point at least, indestructible by children. Even if they've been like painted on, been bitten, had holes chunked out of them, they still function. So somehow maybe get in touch if you want that top tip of which headphones that is. One of our workshops, Raise the Roof, takes inspiration from the sound bath concept, and this whole use of sounds as an experience has really captured our imagination as practitioners in this world. And even when we're not literally doing our digital take on the sound bath, Raise the Roof, we're still trying to appreciate and encourage children to appreciate audio and sounds as experiences in their own rights in our workshops before we even get started thinking about podcasts or radio.
In a similar area, the concept of infrasound is something that we find really inspiring, which is audio that can't be heard in conventional means by the human body. How sound can impact your emotions and your being without hearing it in the conventional way is a great way to free up our thinking before we get started working on an audio project. We haven't yet created the perfect infrasonic workshop for children.
Not yet.
But we'll definitely run one soon, I'm really sure. There's a really good composer who wrote specifically music for these frequencies, and they had to use giant sewage pipes connected to massive speakers to be able to create those kind of low rumbling frequencies.
Your favourite?
Yeah, they really are. And those kind of things are really exciting. They're really cool.
They are. On the broadcasting side, we've also got to mention community radio. So when it's done properly, community radio is such a good way to empower people of all backgrounds to share ideas, start conversations, and gain confidence through the power of audio.
Yeah, and finally, in inspirations, there are so many different artworks and artists working in this field where it makes it impossible to pick just one, but we have chosen just one. There's a really cool artwork called Super Clogger by the artist Joel Kayak, and the work involves a car which got purposely driven and jammed in traffic jams, and then once it was stuck, the artist started doing a puppet show in the back of the vehicle, but also on top of that held up boards with a frequency that nearby drivers can tune their car radios into to hear the dialogue of the play. And all of those things together, especially the really small broadcast for people that are just there by chance, is just wonderful, I think.
That's like Liam has this idea of setting up a Weatherspoons, we can't do it right now, but when Weatherspoons opens, which is probably fairly soon, a Weatherspoons broadcast.
Yeah, it's not a children's
No, it's not a children's.
workshop.
It's just reminded me of that. This is so up your street. Anyway, let's move on to the final section. So we're currently in the process of making some digital and analogue at-home games and activities for families to do at home. So do follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram for the full details once we've released these challenges. But just as a little teaser for you, we're thinking things like the Invisible Podcast, the Real Life Voice Changer, Sound Shadows and Play It Back.
And as well as checking out Wordplay's games and activities, here are a load of other projects that are available to do right now that you should definitely check out. So first of all, the Arts Education Exchange is an organisation working with young people to provide creative experiences and opportunities, and they've set up a digital resource called Sender Sound, or I guess like a performance art space, and they're after anybody to send in sounds, whether they come from a musical space or a field recording space or maybe a speech recording space, and send them in, and then a young producer will get all those resources and dice them up and do with them whatever they choose, and then the magic is to see what pops out the other end, I guess.
Sound artist and composer Emily Peasgood is looking for people of all ages to contribute recordings of their voices to create sound effects from the comfort of their own home, so make sure you check that one out as well.
Yeah, and finally, Creative Folkestone, who are based in Kent and behind the arts festival, the Folkestone Triennial, have added lots of fun at-home activities to their website, including Make Your Own Siren, which is based on a giant artwork that was at the festival and is still in Folkestone, where you can speak through a giant loud siren to out to the sea, and how you can make your own one at home.
Yeah, it's really cool. Check it out.
Okay, so that's just about it. That's all of the presentation that we prepared. But we've received one question, so we'll answer it right now. What kind of permission do you get from parents to record and distribute their child's voice? So on the workshops that we do, usually there's always a recording element, so that's openly discussed before the event takes place. If it's a ticketed event or one in the kind of public realm, buying a ticket, parents or guardians will sign a form saying that we're allowed to record for that purpose, and what we can and can't do with the audio. We've done some work with kind of brands and shops where we've done a workshop where the audio used got passed on and was used, or in one case we produced a podcast especially with the children's involvement to be kind of circulated in the public realm, and all of that was kind of baked into the permission of the form given out to buy a ticket. And then also we do other workshops that are in schools, and again it's very much the same. We have a permission form that the school put out under their own heading through their own means, asking for the permission to record, and then secondly, if that's part of the workshop, to be able to circulate and publish the recordings wherever the project requires that to happen.
Yeah, and we've had another question coming in about the curriculum outcomes. So what we do is usually we get when we work with schools, we get the teachers we work with them before we do a project, because a lot of schools are like, what are you doing? What is this? What do we do? How can we make it work with our school? So yeah, we do look at particular learning goals, outcomes, all the things that particular school has. Schools work differently in different ways, but we tend to work with the teacher to come up with a plan as a collective, rather than us going into schools saying, well, sometimes we do just go into schools and say, you need this, but mostly, yeah, we do work with the schools beforehand to come up with a plan that works for each year group and each school.
So if anybody else has any questions in the future, feel free to send us a message or emails on our website, wordplayeducation.co.uk. And yeah, special thanks to Rise and Shine for allowing us to talk at the festival, and to Sarah as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry we were so awkward.
Yeah, we're definitely not used to being in front of the microphones.
No.
Or the camera.
No. Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.